Welcome, everybody, to Secret Sauce, the show where we hear real-time insights from industry leaders. I'm Karly Iacono. Today, I am so excited to be joined by Melina Cordero, a leader in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space. Melina, welcome to the show. Great to see you. How are
Thank you
you?
so much for having me. I'm great.
Wonderful. Glad to hear it. So I want to just really dive into your experience in DEI and then kind of where you're taking these years of experience for your next venture, because you've had a lot of really exciting changes in your life in the last year, and let's hear about them.
Yeah, I'd love to share. And so it's funny when we talk about background and experience and all these things, because my quote unquote background from a career perspective isn't actually DEI at all, right? I spent most of my career life, or 10 plus years, in commercial real estate, right? In retail and commercial real estate. First on the research side, and then on the capital markets investment sales side. We overlapped as colleagues for a brief period of time together in
Too
I think
short.
2021, right? Of
Yeah,
course,
I
pandemic
think so.
era. So I was doing that for, like I said, just over 10 years. So working with a lot of clients, working within companies, working in the commercial real estate space, thinking about that day in, day out. But as the pandemic hit and as I grew as a person, as a leader, I really started to notice and feel a lot more around these issues and questions of equity and inclusion and diversity. And I was asking a lot of questions about why has this been so hard for us as an industry, as organizations? Why has it been so hard for us to progress? And that grew and grew and grew for me. And of course, there were a lot of things going on between 2020 and 2022 for all of us on personal levels and professional levels. And for me, that really led to the realization that I thought I could do something here. I thought I could take my experience on the business side and working with sales folks and across all different companies, and combine that with a real passion and interest for inclusion and equity and diversifying and innovation, and say, let's do this differently. Let's actually do this in a way that works and that contributes to the business and that people actually enjoy. And so that led me to where I am now. So in 2021, I handed in my resignation, to a little bit of shock and awe across my colleagues, a little bit of the industry, but it felt like the right thing to do for me. And so since then, the past 2 years, I have been loving life and doing a lot of advisory and consulting work for organizations, especially those that are super forward thinking and wanting to not just tick boxes, but really do some trailblazing in the space. And so I've been working with them and have been also building a platform that I'm launching this year that is more of a digital platform meant to really expand learning around diversity, equity, inclusion, and how I prefer to call it is leadership, is post 2020 leadership. So that's what I have been up to.
You have so much to dive into there.
I know that
It's
was
a
a lot.
great overview. I will say you were thought of so highly during your tenure at CBRE. Of course, we were sad to see you move on, but your new venture is so exciting and very needed, of course. And I personally love that you have the business background, right? You have this diverse background. So you're coming at it from a very corporate, very grounded perspective because you've been on the other side. You've been in the actual capital markets world, which of course I appreciate. So fantastic background, and we're excited about your new venture. Why don't we start though very basic, because the rest of us, most people listening, are probably not in this world, and we're definitely not as tuned in as you are. So give us just an overview of what DEI is and why this is such a buzzword today.
It's such a great question to start with because it's a big one. And what is it? Is it DEI? Is it DE and I? What about DEIB? Like it's so confusing. So the first thing I always say when people ask me that question, because sometimes people don't even know how to refer to the work, right?
Right.
I say, forget the acronyms. Just forget them. We have too many acronyms in corporate organizational America, right? So DEI at the heart of it, the D is diversity, the E is equity, I is inclusion, tend to be the three most common terms, but we'll see other ones like belonging or accessibility, right? And that will keep changing. So don't get too attached is the first thing I'll say. The second thing I'll say is yes, each of those words has very specific definitions, but at the heart of it, when you hear DEI, when you hear any of those variations, for me, it's really just about creating environments and cultivating environments where everybody thrives. Like, super simple. I
Like
think the
that.
movement that we're seeing with DEI now is this recognition that, hey, listen, the workplaces and the spaces where we work, play, live haven't exactly been equal for everyone, haven't exactly been super welcoming for everyone, whether that was intentional or a lot of times unintentional. And so I think it's us recognizing that, hey, certain people face more obstacles than others. And we need to proactively do some things differently in order to create a space where actually everyone's talent can come through, has an opportunity to grow, and a recognition from companies that actually were missing out on great ideas, great talent, innovation, because there are too many obstacles in the way for too many people. So that is how I break down DEI in the simplest of terms.
I love the line, a space where everyone can thrive, because that's so encompassing and so simple at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Before we go through your exciting new platform and actionable steps you're seeing companies take, I want a little more background on the issue. What changes have you seen post-pandemic? What did we get set back on, and what's improved, if anything, hopefully?
Oh, so much has changed since the pandemic. So, and in both directions, I would say, and I'm really transparent about this. I love talking about it. I would say, and we all probably saw, especially anybody who's at a bigger company or a public company, right after 2020, especially sparked by the social justice movements we were seeing, George Floyd, Black Lives Matter, a countless number of events and situations that made companies go, oh, we need to do something about this. And so we saw this rush to hire chief diversity officers, a rush to issue statements, a rush to build teams and initiatives and talk about what they were doing. So we saw this huge wave. And that's sort of continued. But what's happened, I would say, even just in the past 6 months, is this huge pushback to ESG, so that environmental, social governance, those initiatives that have been growing over the past few years, push back on the idea of DEI or affirmative action, which is pretty related, that we saw in the Supreme Court just a couple of weeks ago.
Right.
Pushbacks at a state level, it's become a politicized topic, and so people are saying, well, what is happening now? Like, what now? I don't even know. Before, if I didn't know what it was, now I know what it is. I don't know whether I can talk about it without offending someone or getting
Right.
political. So I would say we've seen this push and this pull in two really different directions around it. And that's why I say we really need to step back and move away from even sometimes just the terminology of it and say, well, do you care about what I mentioned before, which is creating spaces where everybody's welcome and everybody thrives? If yes, okay, let's talk about it. Let's figure out what we're going to do about it.
Right. Let's take all of this intensity and two sides, split down the middle away and just get back to what we're really trying to achieve. I think that's great.
Yeah.
Simplify.
Exactly.
So what has improved? More conversation around it, or just more attention?
Mm-hmm.
What are the positives that you've seen post-pandemic?
Oh, so many, right? So I think your word conversation, and that's the number one. I think we need to not just have more conversations about it, which we hear all the time. We need to talk about it. We need to think about it. Yes, of course. And I think we as a general population need more support in doing that. I would say the number one thing I've seen holding people back, especially leaders, is I'm afraid of saying the wrong thing. I don't want to get it wrong. I know this is important. I recognize that, but I also don't want to do something that's going to get me canceled, that's going to get me in trouble, that's going to get me seen as something I am not, right? And so because I don't feel super comfortable with the topic, I'm just gonna stay quiet. So I think we need to talk about it more, but we also need to give people the tools about, how do you talk about it? How can you ask questions about it? Because you're allowed to ask questions, right? I mean, I think that's one of the other big things. So conversation and attention. And we can't just have that. That's where a lot of people are feeling frustrated that, okay, you're sending out memos and you're talking about it and you're having a town hall and you're doing this, but what are you actually doing?
Where's the change?
Where's
Right.
the change? And so that's where, and I work with companies a lot on this, is yes, let's talk about it. And let's look at what we can actually do in terms of operations. So how can we look at everything we're doing and think about how we can make each one of those processes just a little bit more inclusive, a little bit more, look, we're dialing it up, little bit, little bit, little bit. It doesn't need to be these massive changes, because in my view, I have this expression I use all the time, little hinges swing big doors. Make a lot of
I
these
like that.
little micro changes that actually have these
Right.
macro impacts. And so those are things like, okay, in the hiring process, let's look at the wording in our job descriptions. In the interview process, let's look at putting together a panel instead of having it be the same two people interviewing every time. Let's look at the criteria we're using. Again, the wording is really important. It means when we're looking at our vendor selection process, okay, how can we maybe look at these other factors or think about it this way? Or when we post a job description or an RFP, where are we posting it? Are we just posting it on, Indeed.com, or are we also looking at maybe women's professional groups or African American professional groups, right? How are we just making these little changes that actually lead to some pretty big returns? So those are two areas, and conversation and action are obviously the two big pillars.
I love that you break it down into very digestible concepts, right? These are things that we could implement as an industry without having it feel too overwhelming. And I'm sure you have endless other ideas, but those were great small ideas to just say, this is not something that we have to be overwhelmed by and
Yes.
hence turn away from. It's something that even small things can make big outsized impacts. I love that concept.
Yeah.
And
And it's exactly what you said. It's about like that word overwhelming.
mhm,
People just shut down. Like you hear
right.
DEI, you hear ESG, you hear these acronyms, and you're like, I
Like,
don't want to
I'm
go
not,
there.
yeah, exactly. Too much downside, but really
Hmm.
it doesn't have to be that way. You started something, and I do want to touch on your, of course, your consulting services and your new platform. But one thing that I've read that I know you push out, I think it's weekly, is your hard questions newsletter. I love this. What a fantastic idea. So I'm going to botch it, but my impression of it is you're taking questions that people are afraid to ask publicly because of potential backlash, which is real, right? But yet they still want answers too. How do I deal with this situation? Or how do I frame this? Or how do I sensitively deal with XYZ that I'm experiencing at my corporation from a leadership perspective? So the hard questions that leaders are afraid to ask, you're tackling in, I think, anonymous manner, correct? What a
100%.
concept. Tell me more. What a
I
great idea.
mean, you described it really, really well. So the project is called Uncomfortable Questions. It is a project that's ongoing. There's a newsletter, as you mentioned, it's weekly, it's free, and it is very video based. So what I do is exactly as you said, I've been collecting questions. I have this link that I put all over the place on the internet. Anybody in any sector at any level can submit a question or a topic that they're dealing with or that has come up, and they just don't know the answer to. And oftentimes there are questions where they don't feel they have someone or a space where they can ask it without fearing some sort of judgment or
Right.
backlash. And this came out of my work with leaders. This came out of my work across this space, and having come from this commercial real estate space where a lot of times I was the only woman. And when I would form relationships with people and people started to trust me, they felt comfortable asking me things that maybe had been on their mind for a while, but they weren't really sure about. One
Right.
thing that will come up a lot is I'm Hispanic, right? But I don't look Hispanic according to what a lot of people's conceptions are. And so I noticed a lot of times people were afraid to ask me about it. And it wasn't until they got super comfortable with me that they'd say, "Oh, so is your background or is your family?" And they would tiptoe around it. And that's, for example, one question that's come up a lot in the project is it okay to ask someone about their cultural identity or their racial background? And if so, like, how do you do it in a way that's respectful? So
Hmm.
it's really common questions like that, which most of us weren't really taught about, right? And
Right.
so why should we expect leaders to just know how to do all that sensitively, right, correctly, right? So
Right.
the project is really meant to support leaders, because in my view, if we want to change the workplace and make it more inclusive, and a place where, as I mentioned, everyone can thrive, we have to equip our leaders and we have to equip everyone to create that environment. And so that's the mission of the project. And it's I take very specific questions and then I answer them. The goal is to answer each one in under 5 minutes. So most of the videos are 4 minutes, and then I supply additional resources because, these are big topics. You can't answer everything in 4 minutes, but I like to give as much context as I can.
We will put a link in the show notes for anyone listening, but would you like to share how people can find this resource now if they don't scroll through the show notes?
Yeah, absolutely. So I post a lot about it on LinkedIn. So the links to sign up are always on LinkedIn, on my LinkedIn profile, Melina Cordero. Also on my website, melinacordero.com. There's a little pop-up that comes up, very easy, bunch of links directing you to that newsletter. And of course, you can always email me if that's easiest, and I will put you on the list.
Great resource for leaders. I love the angle and just the truth behind it, right? That we're not afraid to tackle things that are tricky because there's no other way to really lead aside from head on. So I appreciate that approach. Moving away from the newsletter, talk to me about your other business, the consulting, the initiatives. What are you learning through your clients? What are some initiatives that companies are putting into place that are just of note in this day and age?
Yeah, I love it. So it's funny because I thought when I left and started my advisory business that I'd be working exclusively in commercial real estate, and because that's where my network was, that's where I came from. And I do have a few clients in that space, but I've also gotten a lot of clients outside of that space, in various nonprofit and foundations, philanthropies, all sorts of different spaces. What's really struck me is how common the challenges are across those spaces. So a lot of times we tend to think about our industry challenges. And yes, there are challenges that are specific to the industry, but we share so many common obstacles and questions across sectors. So I'd say that's the first thing I'm noticing. I'd say there are a couple initiatives that most organizations doing this work focus on, which is hiring, and recruitment and internships, ERGs, right? This idea of affinity groups or employee resource groups, which are like women's networks, things like that. Those are the ones you see the most. But I would say there are lots of other things that we could be doing, a little bit differently, a little bit better. I think the other trend I'm noticing with organizations is that it seems like it's the largest companies, the big public companies, that are doing the most. That's what it looks like on the outside, right? Because they have chief diversity officers and they have whole teams and they have initiatives and they have ESG reports. Exactly. They have a whole thing. So there's this misconception in nearly every industry that DEI is a thing for big public companies because they have to. And smaller and medium-sized companies just don't really have the resources to do anything. They don't have those sort of reporting requirements, and also they just don't have the resources, so they don't do anything. And that I just have to emphasize is false, right? And that's where I spend a lot of time, is working with those smaller and medium-sized organizations that oftentimes do want to do something, but with the only model they have is these big corporations that are able to do more. What can they do? And so it's been really fun working with that tier of organization and teaching them what they can do, and what they can do actually with, a lot of impact. So that's a big misconception I spent a lot of time battling.
Are there any actionable steps or ideas that you could share today for small or medium-sized companies, or even retail owners or developers? I mean, I think, like you said, these concepts are applicable across the board. So any little nuggets that maybe someone listening could take away as a starting point today?
Yeah, I say number one comes more on the personal level. Like, in order to actually get anything done in an organization around this work, you need to take a couple personal steps, and that is to remove the fear, the uncertainty, the sort of, I don't want to get it wrong. And so the best way to do that is just learning, right? And that's sort of why I started the Uncomfortable Questions newsletter, to give people who didn't feel like they knew enough access, a little bit more awareness, a little bit more this, read a little bit of this, do that. I always tell my male colleagues and clients, go to a women's network event, go listen to a women's panel, go hear from them what the challenges are. You don't necessarily need to do anything or say anything or be super present, but listen, learn. So that's one, is really about awareness. And two is, it's okay to not know. So I think leaders so often feel like they need to have the answers and the solutions to things. How do we respond to this event that happened? We're going to do this. I always try and encourage leaders to remove that burden of knowing what to do. Ask your people. Ask your people. I was talking with one leader recently about, what should we do for International Women's Day, Women's Month? Should we issue something every day? Should we do something? What are we supposed to do? And I said, have you asked the women in your organization what would be meaningful to them? Right. And in doing something like that, you're taking the burden off of A, needing to know exactly what to do. B, you're making your people feel heard and respected, right? And like their opinion matters. And you're learning in the process. And so those are two things very, you don't need to have a DEI consultant to do those things. So those are two pieces that I really encourage people to do, especially anyone in a leadership position.
Very easy. Doesn't cost anything, and sounds like it really could make a significant impact.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about this platform that you're starting. Is this for large companies only, small companies? How does that work? What's it going to consist of?
Yeah, I'm so excited about it. And it's actually for every size company. And that was the goal behind it. So what it is, the best way I can describe it is like a Netflix of leadership and DEI support and training. So I call it leadership because it's not just what we would consider, traditional DEI things like, how do I drive diversity? How do I do inclusive hiring? It's also about, how do I manage a hybrid team? How do I make virtual meetings more engaging? It's called P20, which is short for post 2020. And it's based on this belief that, our world and our workplaces changed really dramatically, as we talked about, over the course of 2020. And I don't think that we as leaders, we as employees were supported enough in navigating these changes. And that's not any one person's fault or any organization's fault. I mean, it was a total, when have we had to live through and work through a pandemic? I mean, think of all the things that changed.
Crazy.
And we were all forced to just sort of run around and sort of adjust and sort of try and keep things together, which anyone who was managing anybody during that period can probably relate to. And I think a lot of these changes have stuck, right? A lot of new challenges, new obstacles, new expectations of leaders and organizations and us as employees. And when I say leaders, everybody is a leader, right? It's about cultivating leadership skills and awareness. So the platform is meant to serve as a support system for helping us all navigate these new challenges. And so what that means, like I mentioned, Netflix, it's very video based. So it's tons and tons of videos on very specific topics, very similar to the uncomfortable questions approach. And then each topic, each video is, again, under 5 or 6 minutes. And then each topic comes with supporting resources. I also am inviting external outside experts to come in and lend insights on all different topics. So everything from executive and leadership coaches to employment lawyers to HR experts who focus on diversity and hiring, things like that. And so the platform is built for organizations to have ongoing support and leadership learning. And it's a solution for a lot of medium and smaller organizations that either can't afford a consultant, can't afford a full-time person. And even if they do hire a consultant or an advisor or someone to facilitate a workshop, it's very one-off, right? Someone comes in, leaves some plans, and they walk out. But leadership and DEI and culture, especially today, it's an ongoing, ever-evolving thing. And so it's a platform and a system that allows us to respond to the constantly changing needs and imperatives of the post-2020 workplace.
Are you going to be basing the videos on questions you're receiving through your consulting clients, or just on a curriculum of topics that you think are relevant today, and adding more content as the issues evolve? Kind of how are you building the content base?
That's a great question. It's both. So on the one hand, it's iterative and it's based on feedback, right? So across the platform, anybody at any point using it can submit a question or a topic, again, anonymously or with their email that they want to understand. And so in that way, it's constantly responding to the needs of the users and of the people. And at the same time, I and all the experts I'm working with are obsessed with research, obsessed with data, obsessed with the newest things. And so my responsibility, my commitment set is staying on the very cutting edge of what's coming up. What are some new challenges? AI. When we talk about a topic like AI, do we even know what questions to ask when we don't know what we don't know? What should we be asking about with AI, right?
Right.
And so it's a combination of you tell me what you need and I will address it. And I'm going to tell you what you should be thinking about before you even realize it. So that's the fun part.
Don't even know you need it yet. AI is such a great
Exactly.
example. I mean,
Yeah.
who would have even thought to merge these two topics, right? DEI and AI.
It's so related.
But
It's
right. But you're right. Absolutely
Yeah.
fascinating. Well, I am really excited to check this platform out when it goes live. Do you have a timeline? When is this launching? And
Yes.
how do we find it?
I'm so excited. So it'll be launching publicly in Q4. Over
Okay.
Q3, I left corporate America, but I still speak in like quarters, right?
Yep.
So in Q3, actually we are in Q3, aren't we? So this quarter.
Yep. Depending on when
Yes,
the video goes live. Yep.
this is true. Well, right now in my office, it's Q3. So, and so I am actively recruiting beta users, so kind of early adopters. I've got a couple lined up already that are actively using it, and it's been fantastic. So opening up a partners program for any organizations or leaders who want to sort of get ahead and be a part of building the platform and getting in early. I throw in a couple bonuses with that, some workshops and consulting hours that typically cost a lot more. And so doing that, and then you can look for the more public announcement at the end of the year. But in the meantime, if you have questions, if you're interested, if your interest is piqued, reach out to me, and I will absolutely be happy to talk to you about it and see if you're interested in the partners program.
This is a big deal. Congrats on this
Thank
next
you.
step and, leaving a wonderful career to start something big on your own. That's impressive and definitely takes a lot of guts. And I think it's extremely necessary. So congrats in advance on what I know will be a huge success when it goes live.
Oh, well, thank you so much. And it's great to stay connected to everyone in the industry and everybody doing amazing things and wanting to learn about this. So consider me a resource. Reach out anytime. I always have time for my commercial real estate friends.
Love it. Melina, it's so nice to spend time with you today. We really appreciate your insights and your thoughts on DEI and can't wait to see where all of your projects go next.
Thank you so much.
Thanks again. And for everyone listening, that was Secret Sauce. We're very happy you could join us again this week, and we hope to see you again very soon. Have a great day, everyone.